All right, everybody, let's grab a chair and let's get our meeting started, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's time and coming to the meeting today. We've got a lot to do on our agenda today. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to facilitate today's meeting, so I'll be responsible for process. We have already developed some objectives for today's meeting. Just take a quick look at these. We're going to update the Master Woodland Manager program. We're going to talk about the upcoming training, which starts here in about 3 weeks up in Northeast Oregon. And then we're going to focus most of our time and attention on the curriculum itself. We're going to take a quick look at the modules that we have scheduled for our training, talk about how we integrate those together, make sure that we don't have any gaps or areas where we need to fill in additional information or trying to coordinate one module to another. So that's kind of what we're about today. Here's our agenda, so you can kind of see where we want to go in the time we have. We've got about 5 hours for the meeting and the different elements of that. We're going to focus some time and attention on this leadership management skills part of the meeting because that's such an important thing as having effective meetings. We do have some ground rules for today's meeting, and as the facilitator I think that's real important because if we follow ground rules it'll just make us, allow us to be much more efficient. Want to start and end on time. I'm a big believer in that. We're right on the button for starting, so I really appreciate you guys being prompt, and we're going to end right on time as well. Be really helpful if we don't have any side conversations. Let's all focus on the meeting and what we're trying to accomplish here today. When we have a chance to contribute around the table, let's kind of make those contributions brief, concise, to the point. We don't need any stump speeches. We know how that works. Unrelated topics, we'll talk about those in a minute in the parking lot. And I'm going to really try to just help you kind of manage the meeting as much as we can, just kind of keep us focused so we get things off. The last one is probably the most important one for me these days in meetings because the cell phones really are a distraction. And so if you got a cell, appreciate you turn it off, put it on vibrate, kill it, whatever you need to do. Now, that's kind of the beginning of the process. I want to introduce to you Rick. He's going to be our recorder for today's meeting. He'll tell you a little about his role.
My job today is to make sure that what you say gets recorded accurately on the sheet up here. I will try to summarize the major points that we talk about, and your job is to make sure I get them right. So I'll be looking to you and discussing with Mike to make sure we get the things accurately. So if I write something up here and it doesn't represent what you said, then please tell me so I can make sure I get it right. And I'll put some items over here in just general meeting records, and then over on the other side of me is the parking lot, which as we move along through the meeting, we're going to come up with items that we can't handle right away, and we want to just park them for a little while and work on them later. And we'll put those items in the parking lot, and we'll come back to those later on.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. Everybody ready to go for the meeting? We're going to start right here on the Master Woodland Manager update. Nicole? Folks, we're going to talk about integrating the modules next. I'd like to get some ideas from you how we might proceed.
So one person and let them figure out how to put them all together.
That's too many people all.
Yeah, I think
Nicole should do it.
Wait a minute.
That's for all of us to
I don't think
everything. You know, Nicole can
We don't
do
need
this.
to all work on it.
She could
You
have
gotta
it
make
along.
sure there are
Well,
linkages
we
because
don't-
that's my job. The whole
Frequent
process
flyer
was, the whole idea of doing that was to have a committee working together.
How many on
you
the
know what
committee,
happens?
though?
At least get a
Process.
timeline for this whole thing. Come on
We
now.
have a timeline. The first
What did Susan
training
say?
begins in April.
I
Well,
think
say it
I
again,
think I
please.
said that it was.
Folks, we're going to talk about integrating the modules next. I'd like to get some ideas from you how we might proceed. Any thoughts?
I think we need to give the modules to one person and have them figure out.
Maybe
how to do
Nicole
with them.
could.
No, it's got to
Could do
be.
that
It's got to
since
be
she's the
somebody
coordinator.
from
Hold on,
each
folks. Can
module.
we just do one at a time? I can't follow all three conversations at once. Raise your hand, and then we'll take you in order. First we'll get Tim, then Steve, then over to John. Tim, first.
Well, it makes sense to me to have only one person focus on lining them up. That way, it makes sense.
Okay, now hold on. We want to make sure we get that recorded. Rick is recording. So the first comment is we want to make sure that we get each of those.
Yeah, one person to organize the
Right.
linkages so that it makes sense.
Okay, one person to organize the linkages. All right, Steve?
Yeah, well, taking off from what Tim said, I think Nicole should do it since she's the master woodland manager course.
Steve, so the idea we had there was that Nicole handle the integration since she's the manager.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
great, excellent. I think we've got that recorded. John, how about your idea?
Well, I'm just concerned we've all had a part in these, and I just don't see how we can hand this all off to one person to have them do it. We got to have a committee here and have involvement from the lead authors on each of these particular modules. I just don't see any way that we can do that otherwise.
All right, any other thoughts, ideas? Nicole?
I think that since we have over 12 authors writing these modules, that we should have at least one representative from each on the committee.
Okay, great idea. Let's see that we get that recorded, Rick. Thank you very much. Good. Now, how about some other ideas? We haven't heard yet from Dave or from Steve, Mr. Bowers. Either of you guys? Okay, I think we're ready to move forward on the agenda, folks, and begin identifying just how we want to kind of make this integration process work. We've already talked about we're going to have a committee set up. We're going to try to figure out that process. But now let's kind of figure out the steps in that as we go along. First idea, Tim?
Before we answer that, can we find out how the modules are to be delivered? Like, I'm not even sure if, how the integration is going to work, or whether the modules in one day, or is there 3-4 weeks in between them? How's it going to happen?
Help MWM see how it's integrated. It's not so much about how we do it, but they've got to see it. It's not just separate topics. We may teach it that way, but the content and skills overlap. They apply across all of these.
Across all these modules.
Right, John. I also think that it's important that we ensure that we're not repeating information from.
I'll get back to you when I get there.
Hey, thanks,
Hey,
Dave.
man, good to see you, man.
What's up?
All right, good deal, man.
Glad you could join us for the meeting, Dave.
Hey, oh,
Hey,
yeah.
we've just been talking about integrating these modules. I wonder if you got any ideas.
Yeah, I do. I was thinking we should split them up into 2 different module groups, and then those groups can work on their topics, and then, they can integrate later.
It's not a bad idea, but can we finish the agenda right now?
Well, that sounds good, but don't you think we should talk about who's going to integrate it?
Actually, we were just talking about that, Dave.
Well, I'm sorry I'm late. Excuse me.
I think we also want to ensure that we don't repeat the same information from one module to the.
I'll get hold of you.
Hey, Dave, thanks for making it to the meeting. We're right in the middle of things. Why don't you grab a seat right over there? And Dave, we'll catch you up at the break. And by the way, let's make sure we got that cell phone turned off. We got one of our ground rules here. No cell phones. Thanks. Now, Nicole, back you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying that I think it's important that we don't repeat information from one module to the next, and that's something we'll only uncover process.
Let's continue our discussion now, talking about a timeline for the integration process. I guess where I'd like to start is by making a list of everything that needs to be done between now and, say, the delivery date. So, yeah, Steve, first. Your idea?
I think when we finish this integration, that some modules still need to be tweaked, and that needs to go back to the authors for them to revise.
Okay, information back to the authors. Have we got that idea for you on the board?
Yeah.
Susan, your thoughts?
Well, then I think copies of that need to go out to each of the people that'll be teaching the modules so that they get a chance to look at it.
All right, information back to the teachers. Tim, what were you going to say something in the back there?
Yeah, that I'm not sure. I can't hear.
What are we talking about anyway?
We're talking about integrating these modules, and we're trying to
You're
figure
still
out
talking
kind of
about
the
integrating the
timeline
modules?
of what. That's exactly right.
What are you talking about?
You know, we just.
Here, and we're going to try to figure out the next steps in the timeline and how we're going to accomplish that. And Steve, you have an idea?
Well, I think on the integration, we need to finish that up, and any information from that goes back to the authors for them to revise their modules.
Right. Okay.
Before we actually get it outside.
Great. All right. So revise the modules over here, and then Susan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, at some point we need to make copies of all those modules, get them out to the instructors so they can review them and make sure they make sense.
Okay, great, excellent. Rick? Okay, Nicole, John, hey, we've got a ground rule. Want to just make sure that no side conversations so we all can stay kind of focused on our discussion. Susan just had a great idea getting the information back to the authors. Now, Tim, you had your hand up in the back.
Yeah, well, I'll be happy to review some of that now that I know what's going on.
Okay, great, excellent. Next step for us, folks, is to get this timeline figured out and know what our specific tasks are. What has to be done first, second, third, etc. So let's focus in on that now. Who's got an idea? Anyone? Nobody with an idea. John, you've got.
No, I don't really. I don't know. Maybe. I guess we gotta have a starting point. I don't know.
Yeah, we gotta have a starting point. Good, Dave.
Well, maybe if the first group actually did what the third group we had planned was doing, and the
I'm still not sure what to record. I don't know what the next step is here, folks.
Folks, I think we're having a little hard time focusing here. We're having a hard time getting anything written down. Where are we at as a group? We think we're up against a break. We need a little fresh air.
Yeah.
We've been pushing pretty hard today.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we take 10 minutes? Everybody gets a break, get some fresh air, grab something to drink or eat, and then come back in 10 minutes and we'll try to finish this thing up and get that timeline wrapped. Okay.